All right. It looks like we're live. Welcome, everyone, to the Cover One Roundup podcast. I am your usual co host, now your primary host, David Fox. Here with me is somebody that most of you will probably not know or recognize, but that is okay because you're going to learn a lot from him in the next hour or so. This is a friend of mine who had to come in because Kyle is not here. He is celebrating his sister's birthday. Happy birthday to Kyle's sister, whoever she is, however old she may or may not be right now. So I am going to introduce my co-host for this evening, Erik Davey. Just a little background. We met each other when we worked at Sports Info Solutions in 2019. We were both football video scouts there. We both worked very long hours and got to know each other very well over the course of many long nights. So we've kept in touch. I needed someone to fill in last minute. He came to the top of the list, and we're gonna talk about draft prospects because Erik knows what he's talking about. So, Erik, how are you this fine evening?
I'm fantastic. Couldn't be, more happy to be anywhere else. Yeah.
All right, good. John, we are not answering that question, but that'll be a Kyle question. Save that for next week. So, first thing we're going to get into is going to be the Roundup because there is actually just a little bit of news. Nothing, not too unexpected, but it was reported during the combine that Cole Beasley is allowed to, was granted permission rather to seek a trade. Cole Beasley's kind of been in discussions pretty much since the offseason ended in January about whether he should even be on this team moving forward. If he's a cut candidate, he'll probably be asked to take a pay cut at least, if not just outright released. If he's a trade candidate, et cetera, et cetera. So this is not overly surprising. He's been, despite what some people might think, he's been a very good receiver, including last year. He still has a couple good years left in him, I think. But it also sounds like the way Brandon Bean put it that he is going to leave the door open for Beasley to come back if they don't find a way to trade him. Erik, any thoughts on the Cole Beasley news and what may or may happen with him?
I think Beasley's been a really good receiver for the Bills. I mean, he kind of ushered in a new era for them, with Josh Allen and John Brown, and he's been a heck of a producer the last couple of years. I think might be time to move on. I mean, he's getting up there in age, and his production kind of dipped as the year went on, and battling injuries. But you can't ask for a much better slot receiver. Fits that archetype pretty well. So
he was really big in helping Allen, especially in his second year, and just been super consistent with him. It'll be interesting. I would imagine that he'll probably not end up being on the team in 2022. Not that big a deal, at least in terms of they'll find a way to replace him. It won't be as easy as some people might make it seem, but he's somebody that they can find some replacements for. And some of the places they might look for to replace him will be in the draft, which is exactly what we're talking about because the NFL scouting combine was this past weekend and 40s were run, drills were had, benches were not pressed because hardly anybody did bench press. But that's okay because that's kind of a useless drill anyway. And also the one probably most prone to injuries. So, what we're going to be talking about, we're going to kind of go through. We've talked about on this podcast before for those of our loyal listeners. We've talked about needs for the offseason, who we might look at in free agency, who just sort of positions of need. So I had Erik here look at some of the guys that were a part of the combine this past weekend that the Bills, I think, would or should be targeting to help fill positions of need. I think we're going to start at cornerback, and we're going to start with two guys from the same university. We're going to start at the University of Washington. We're going to start with Kaiir Gordon. Now, for some athletic context, if Google Chrome actually cooperates with me and actually loads this tab that I've had loaded, it won't. So Kaiir Gordon came in to this combine. Here we go. There we go. All right, so we're just going to go through his measurables that are available. So he came in 5'11 and a half, 194 pounds, 31-inch arms, 9¼ hands, and he ran a 4.52 40. Pretty solid athletic profile. The 31-inch arms, that's above the threshold. The threshold is typically 30-inch arms. We'll get into that later, as that might be an issue with someone else. Oh, good Lord. That's okay. I'm not dying. Not yet.
What a recovery.
Thank you. 5'11 and a half, 4.52 40 was probably the more surprising part. So based on what you watched of Kaiir Gordon, what did you think of him from the All-22 that you watched the other day?
Solid cover guy. He has got an inside-outside versatility. They like to put him in the slot, and they put him out wide, often enough. He's got some quickness to him. He can stay on top of guys, and what I saw in the run game though was a bit tough. Gets pushed around at times. Can kind of lose the edge there. But I think if he's in the slot, he can do well. He's got the length with the arms, and I think he can really do well there.
Mm-hmm. Well, the slot corner position's kind of been locked up with the Bills with Taron Johnson, and they gave him an extension last year. I can't really imagine they would take a guy that they feel is going to be mostly a slot type of corner. So do you feel like he is somebody who is really mainly going to thrive in the slot and that he shouldn't be outside? Do you feel like he just sort of has that inside out versatility, or?
I think his biggest asset is that versatility, but he can definitely play full-time outside. I see no problem with that.
So 4.52 40, do you have any, do you feel like that kind of showed up on tape, that he wasn't like the most athletic dude, that he wasn't like one of a super blazer with speed, or did you feel like that was maybe too low or even too fast for him? What'd you think?
He on tape, you couldn't really see him get burnt too often, but it's not too bad of a time for a corner. It's not exactly what you want out of your elite guys, but
yeah,
stay with people and work his tail off. And, it's all right.
That's fair. That's fair enough. Fair enough. So then we're gonna move on to the next corner. Trent McDuffie, also from the University of Washington. In the pre-show, before we got live, you and I were talking about him. You seemed to think a little more highly of Trent McDuffie. He came into the combine 5'11", 193. He had 29.75-inch arms, 8.75-inch hands. He ran a 4.44 40-yard dash. So with the arm length. Right, so that was a big talking point, and kind of a big talking point all throughout Sunday when discussing McDuffie and corners in general. Is like there's this threshold of 30-inch arms, right? Like the guys that you want in the NFL that tend to be good tend to have 30-inch arms. 29.75 is the difference of that much, if it's not coming through on my 360p cam, it's not that far. And if he had come in with 30-inch arms, nobody would even be talking about it. But I just with 29.75, it suddenly becomes a talking point. I personally don't think it's that big a deal. And if I recall correctly, if you look at this list of guys who have those sub 30-inch arms, I think one of those is actually Levi Wallace, who's been a starter for this team. Actually, let's double check mean, I'm gonna have my producer double check. No, Levi Wallace, 32 3/4 inch arms. So he was actually good arm length. That's actually a little surprising. But regardless, Trent McDuffie. What'd you think of him on film when you looked through him?
I mean, McDuffie for me was the full package. I mean, he stays on top of guys vertically. He's got the closing speed to get down on breaking routes. And I really loved him in the run game. Solid tackler. Wasn't really many broken tackles I could see of him. He gets by his blocker. He gets good leverage on the outside. I think he's going to be one of those guys that you look at 25. Honestly, he's got the skill to play with anyone. The 29 and 3/4 inch arms. You can say whatever you want. That's fine. It's not going to hurt him in the end. He's got the skill. You can see it on film. So,
so you feel like that's a target at 25 for the Bills. Do you feel like there's a possibility, let's say the Bills trade out of that spot, which would be the first time Brandon Beane has ever done that. It's not the first time he's tried to do it. He apparently last year was all set to trade out of their second round pick before Boogie Basham fell to them, and apparently that was their guy, so they ended up taking him. So it's not something that he's opposed to doing, but they just haven't really done that before. If they trade out of that spot and go into day two with multiple second round picks, let's say, do you think there's like a floor and a ceiling, or let's say a floor with Trent McDuffie? Do you think he makes it out of the first round? Do you think he's like one of the first three guys on day two? Like, what are your thoughts there?
The depth on defense is so good in this draft. I could see him going anywhere, in the first round to, early second round. But maybe I'm just bullish. He's got the ability to play in the league, and he's got the ability to be like a really good number two corner, and that would be
right. And that's sort of the thing with that we keep coming back to, when, or at least that I think should always be in the minds of Bills fans, is like we're talking about a number two corner. So when we talk about a lot of these thresholds for like starting cornerbacks, like, yeah, a number two cornerback is always going to be a starter, but we're not talking about somebody who needs to lock up with everyone's ex receiver and follow, right? Like, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a replacement for Levi Wallace and somebody who will likely be competing with Dane Jackson. We're not talking about somebody who needs to be top of the top. We're talking about somebody that we want to be able to have like a big upgrade at, especially an athletic upgrade. And despite all of the maybe the size concerns, given that he's 5'11" and has shorter arms, is that he ran a 4.44. That plays in the league. That plays really well in the league. And I think that is going to be really important. And the size concerns tends to be an issue when you're talking about tackling. But like you said, he's been very aggressive as a tackler. He's a solid tackler. He comes up in run defense, which we know is so important for this Bills, that they want their corners to be able to do that. So, I mean, McDuffie, to me, from what we know of what the Bills like in their defensive starters, I'm just seeing checked boxes here for me. I mean, and the thing that I've said about Sean McDermott, I've said it on this podcast, I've said it ever since he came into Buffalo. He can coach up and get the best out of defensive backs. Like, for people that don't know, like, what Sean McDermott did when he was in Carolina, he made Kurt Coleman a Pro Bowl safety. Kurt Coleman was atrocious as a player before Sean McDermott got his hands on him and turned him into a Pro Bowl safety. Like, I cannot emphasize that enough. Like, Sean McDermott knows what he's doing. He has gotten the most out of Levi Wallace, who does not have a good athletic skill set. He has gotten like way more out of Trey White than I think people were expecting. I mean, people liked Trey White coming out of LSU, but I don't think they were expecting like elite level cornerback play from Trey White. And that's exactly what he's been ever since he's been in Buffalo. And Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier have gotten exactly that out of those guys. So I think, yeah, I am like 100% in on Trent McDuffie as a potential high pick for them, first round even. A lot of that is going to depend on free agency, which is probably something you're going to hear throughout most of this podcast tonight, because free agency opens up very, very soon. And I'm looking forward to it. There's corners that are out there. There's cheap corners that are out there. There's corners that have played in this style of defense before, like Dante Jackson, that are going to be available. Whether or not they actually decide to pay up that kind of money to a Dante Jackson, or maybe they go cheap and get like a Sidney Jones. We know that Eric Turner's been pounding the table for Sidney Jones. It's all going to depend. Maybe they really feel like they should go with a draft pick, or maybe as John puts here, maybe they should do free agency and a draft pick. I'm totally okay with that, because I think last year when Trey White went down, that was pretty devastating. I mean, that was like one of the hearts of this defense, and he's been on this team for a while now. But like, ultimately speaking, there wasn't like a massive drop off when they had to start playing Levi Jackson or Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson. It wasn't the same. And I think what they ended up missing were some of the like big splashy sort of turnover type plays that they were used to getting defensively down the stretch. I think that's what they were missing, but ultimately, like they were still like pretty sound coverage wise. They weren't like blowing a bunch of assignments. Teams weren't starting to, get big, huge chunk plays through the air or anything like that. So like they were playing fairly well, but I think that also creates a window of like, okay, when Trey White went out, we were fine, but we weren't the same. So I want to be able to have that type of depth to be able to say like, okay, we have Trey White, but he's also coming back from an ACL tear. Levi Wallace is probably on his way out, and Dane Jackson is still going to be there, and Dane Jackson is fine, but there needs to be a little more depth here, because outside of that, you got like Saron Neal, who, like, God bless him, not an outside corner. He is a dime corner that you bring in to help match up with tight ends if you want, and that's pretty much it. And he's a special teams ace. But like, yeah, I'm all in. Like, give me a cheap corner to go in free agency, and then like a Trent McDuffie in the first or early second. I am totally in on that. I think that would be the best case scenario. A lot of that's just going to depend on what they end up doing in free agency, and even who's available and what kind of money they might end up having. So yeah.
And accruing depth at the corner is so important in the AFC, especially at the top.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this. You have to go against, they're stacked at wide receiver. And it shows, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Cincinnati. I mean, I don't know how good they're going to be next year, but I mean, regardless, they're going to have T. Higgins. They're going to have Jamar Chase. They're going to have Tyler Boyd. I mean, that those are three like legit high level receivers at each of their positions. You look at, I mean, Kansas City. Kansas City has a problem where they don't really have a lot of receivers, but their biggest threat is going to be Tyreek Hill, and right now the Bills don't really have like that. I mean, let's be clear, nobody can like match up with Tyreek Hill one-on-one, because he's just like impossible. Like that's the problem with Tyreek Hill. But if you have someone that can like get into that deep zone and stay with him, I the only one that I think can do that on the Bills right now is probably Trey White. But even then, I'm a little iffy on that. And someone like Trent McDuffie running a 4.44, I'm into that. So we're gonna move on because we've spent a good amount of time. Good. We want new corners. We'll keep it simple here. We want some new corners, whether that's in free agency or in the draft, or even both. Corner is something we want to go. And another place I know a lot of Bills fans are hoping to get is some more size on the interior defensive line. So one of the guys that you looked at, actually you looked at both of the Georgia guys. We're going to very, very briefly talk about everyone's favorite large adult son, Jordan Davis, who put on one of the most absurd displays of athleticism this weekend.
Freak show.
The man is 6'6", 341 pounds, 4'7", 840. I cannot emphasize this enough. That is stupid. Like, that is stupid athletic. Somebody like him should not exist on planet Earth. Like, this might actually be an alien. He's absurd. And because of that, I truly, genuinely think there's absolutely no way that he would be available for the Bills at that position. Like, the only way I could see that is if some craziness happens and teams start taking like multiple quarterbacks in the first round, which like I really don't see that happening. But teams get weird when it comes to quarterback. I mean, we all hear Buffalo no and remember EJ Manuel getting taken in the first round in 2013. So
listen, there was a draft not too long ago where Bill Jones and Dwayne Haskins went in the first round. Pain.
Yeah. So crazy stuff can happen in a draft, and we know that. But it just sort of seems like, especially with the team, I keep thinking about the Chargers. I think they pick at like 20, and they just so desperately need somebody like him to just exist right there in the middle of their defense, because they have nothing there. Like Jerry Tillery, God bless him, was just like awful last year in run defending, and they were like, Brandon Staley is a very good defensive mind, but he basically just said, I really, truly do not care about run defense this year, because we just don't have they just don't have the bodies. They just didn't have the bodies last year. And so I think that somebody like Jordan Davis would be perfect for them. We're gonna bring up a comment right here. Keep in mind, the problem with Davis is his endurance, not his athleticism. He always popped on film from that aspect. His endurance as a concern. I'm not totally sold on that, and I'm going to let this be the last point about Jordan Davis, because I really don't think he's going to be available, and I want to talk about other players. But like Jordan Davis, there's been a lot made about like his snap count and like his rotation and blah, blah, blah. Like, part of the reason why he was rotating so much with Georgia is that next year you're probably going to see multiple first-round defensive tackles from the University of Georgia again. Like, they brought him out on passing downs because they had other guys that are going to be first-round picks that could just do that better. It's not that Jordan Davis can't do the things that you want a nose tackle to do. And to be perfectly honest, the Bills, they rotate their defensive line probably more than most teams in the NFL. And that's been a big thing for them since Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier have gotten here. So I don't have that same concern. I know other people do. I do not have that same concern. Again, I think it's mostly irrelevant because I don't think Jordan Davis is going to be there. But someone else who might be there for them is his teammate from the University of Georgia, Devontae Wyatt, who also had a crazy good combine. So Devontae Wyatt, 6'3", 304 pounds, 32 5/8 inch arms, 9 7/8 inch hands, 4.77 40-yard dash. He had a 111 broad jump and a 29-inch vertical. That is phenomenal. I mean, this is, and the thing is, we talk about how much we as fans, and in particular, like us at Cover One, have talked about how much we want more size on the interior of the defensive line. But that's not really been how the Bills scout and bring in guys. They tend to take guys like an Ed Oliver or a Harrison Phillips or Justin Zimmer as a backup, and those are the types of guys that they bring in. They tend to be a little lighter, and that's fine. But to me, when you are constantly, again, this is not my idea. This has been out there for a long time. Eric Turner has been pounding this drum for the last couple of months. When you play nickel defense as your base, essentially, like well over 90% of your snaps, it puts a lot on your linebackers to essentially be playing two gaps the way that the Bills want them to. And it also puts a lot on your nickel, Taron Johnson, who's only like 5'8". I mean, he's a dog. Like, Taron Johnson can get up there in run defense and play with the best of them, but it asks a lot of those second-level defenders. And so I think that having more size on the defense is what we would like to have, but realistically speaking, it just doesn't seem like the type of guys that they want. And that's sort of what people have been saying here. John Davis is not the type of deep tackle that the Bills draft high anyway. I don't see Sean pounding the table for him. Yeah, I mean that's just sort of how it is. I mean, I would love to. We would love to see a big, heavy nose tackle. Again, and there's guys in free agency that might be available there, but in terms of guys that they might really like and that would be available for them at 25, Devontae Wyatt fits that box perfectly. So, what did you think when you watched Devontae Wyatt?
Dude can move. That's the first thing that jumps out at you. They also moved him around on the line a lot. I mean, he was playing, one tech out to like four, over the tackle. So, they put him in space and he was able to produce. I mean, the guy's a good pass rusher, and he can also, get in the way and take up space. High motor guy. He was always finishing near the ball. So if you want someone who can do everything, I think you would want to draft Devontae Wyatt. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and here's what's interesting. So, like, Ed Oliver had a really good season this past year. I mean, I banged the table for Ed Oliver all season. Like, this dude is having a legit season. If a quarterback, if like a couple quarterbacks just held onto the ball like a quarter of a second longer, he would have like 3 or 4 more sacks on his season. And he was really good against the run. He's just so disruptive. Erik did a great breakdown of him. Outside of that, you have Harrison Phillips, who's impending free agent. I have not seen anything to suggest that he might leave. I have not seen anything to suggest that he's going to come back. It's not really certain either way. I haven't read anything. There's nothing in the tea leaves that I've been able to discern with him. I would think that somebody who's been the Walter Man of the Year nominee or Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee for the last couple of years for this team is somebody that they would like to have, especially for a team that really values like those types of guys and high character guys and guys that help out in their community. I have to imagine that he will be brought back. So assuming that Harrison Phillips gets brought back, I think him and Ed Oliver are the starters. And then you bring in Devontae Wyatt, who not only just doesn't have to start right away, just in general, but like they don't really do that with their high draft picks typically anyway. They like to bring guys along a little slower. So to me, Devontae Wyatt kind of feels like almost a no-brainer if he's available for them, and he might not be. But I could totally see Devontae Wyatt being this pick that they get. Like how do you feel about him working in rotation with like Phillips and Ed Oliver there? Because that to me just kind of seems like perfect to me.
Yeah, I think he's one of those plug and play guys that you can get in the first 2 rounds. I mean, honestly, if Jordan Davis wasn't in this draft, he'd probably be getting taken in the top 15. That's how good I feel about him. I mean, he can kind of do everything you ask him. He's really good in stunts up front, and I feel like if you get him in there, you can get pressure with 4, and that's something that teams really need now that the league is fully entrenched in throwing the ball 50 times a game.
Right, and not only that, but also running so much too high coverages to counteract all these big play offenses like the Bills, like the Chiefs, even the Bengals to an extent. Like you need to be able to like win with that 4 so that you can play those 2 high safeties and not have to rotate someone just to play that middle of the field close and bring in pressure or generate pressure from blitzing or whatever. So I think that's so important, I think. And I think Devontae Wyatt could be a really, really good fit. And I think that'll be, I have to imagine he's high on their board. He's just gotta be. So we're going to bring up somebody else that you did not watch yet. And somebody who doesn't have like a lot of film available, generally speaking. But it's somebody that kind of fits into this nose tackle spot. Travis Jones from UConn. If Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt didn't exist and have the combine that they did, I think more people would be talking about Travis Jones right now. Dude came in 6'4", 325 pounds, 34-inch arms, 10.25-inch hands. He ran a 4.92, vertical jumped 28.5, and a broad jump of 110, 3-cone 7.33, 20-yard shuttle of 4.58. This is good stuff. This is like really good stuff, and nobody's talking about him because all these two other dudes from the national championship Bulldogs just came out and destroyed the combine. But this dude, I mean, this is somebody that should be on the radar for these guys because he is that sort of nose tackle. And I don't know if he's the type of guy that they would like. I don't know if he fits the profile that they love. But if you're the Bills and you're not going to take somebody in the first round, I think there's an opportunity in the second round to maybe where you could trade up into those first few picks in the second round, and he's going to be one of those guys that people are going to just be clamoring for, because that's always what happens at the beginning of the second round, right? There's always like those first like 10 spots, and everybody's just like, this dude fell, and we need to get him like right now. We have to. There's always like clamoring for trade ups into that spot. So that's sort of like a potential fallback plan, at least in my mind, for the Bills, assuming they even want this dude. I mean, again, I don't know how they feel about this dude from an athletic test or from a physical profile. But to me, he could be like really, really good for this team. So then we're going to move on and we're going to talk about receivers and somebody that you watched, albeit one game. And we already had Eric Turner put out a great video about him a few days ago. Alec Pierce from the University of Cincinnati, the playoff caliber University of Cincinnati Bearcats.
Big year for Cincinnati. Oh yeah,
that's right. Came in to the combine, 6'3", 211 pounds, 33-inch arms, 9-inch hands. He ran a 4.41 and jumped 40.5 inches. He had a broad jump of 129, 3-cone drill of 7.13, 20-yard shuttle of 4.28. And I mean, this is somebody who was on Bruce Feldman's like freak list coming into this year. And I mean, that's always such a great list whenever it comes out. And I don't know who was or was not surprised about that. After this combine, I don't think anybody's surprised that he was on that list. This dude like has that type of potential. So talk to me. What did you think when you looked at Alec Pierce?
Yeah, besides his Tom Holland impression at the combine out there, I mean, he's got really good long speed. He can get down the field. He can stretch the field. I think he's a really good, number 3, number 4, solid special teams contributor coming in first couple of years. He's got a little bit of outside versatility too, and that's important. And if you want to get a big body guy and throw him in the slot, I think that's a really good move to get the run game going too. So he's got that natural kind of ability. If they can work with him on that, he was a little. He didn't, block with the power you'd think he did. He could at Cincinnati, and I think with a little bit more development, he can get there. I mean, he's only going to be 22 at the start of the season, so he's a really interesting guy just based off of his athleticism alone.
For
and
sure.
He's got good hands, natural hands, and that's important. When you're looking at a receiver, you got to be able to catch the ball.
Yeah. So you bring up that sort of inside-outside versatility, which I think is really interesting because, moving forward with this Bills offense, I think that, I mean, you have Stephon Diggs as your X, like that set in stone. Don't need to worry about that. With Cole Beasley, Isaiah McKenzie, both probably gone, and Emmanuel Sanders probably retiring, and if not, he might just be on a different team altogether. You're kind of left with Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, and not a ton else. Now, there's guys available both in free agency and the draft that can fill those spots. Somebody like Alec Pierce, who can do the sort of inside-out thing, is sort of how the Bills were using Gabe Davis in his first 2 years. Like Gabe Davis is really not that dissimilar in terms of his build and his size. I can bring up the actual like measurements for Gabe Davis so we can get like an actual comparison, because I just sort of thought of this off the top of my head. So Gabe Davis at the combine was 6'2", 216, 32 and a quarter inch arms, 9 and a quarter inch hands. He ran a 4.54, 4.59 20-yard shuttle, 7.08 3 cone, 35-inch vertical, 10'4" broad jump. So Alec Pierce, in a lot of ways, is actually just the better athlete. But the other thing is just going to be like one of the things that Gabe Davis the Bills have used him in has been this sort of like almost sort of like flexy sort of role where they like to bring him in to block in the box some. And like you said, Alec Pierce, like you said, there's sort of like there's a willingness from him to be able to block in the run game. But you just sort of feel like he needs to be able to just develop a little bit more from a strength perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he can crush dudes if he puts the effort in and works on it. He's got that size and the arm length.
Yeah, this sort of seems like the type of guy that would be available. Probably, I mean, I would think like 4th round is probably where he ends up going. If a team really feels confident in him, maybe you could see the 3rd round, just based on the athletic testing alone. But yeah,
based on his production and his athleticism, I instantly thought of Terry McLaurin, 4-year guy. Right? I mean, guy is an absolute uber athlete, and he just didn't have the production at Ohio State because he was buried, which was not the case with Alec Pierce because he went to Cincinnati, so much lower, pool of talent there. But
that's really interesting.
It's kind of fun to think about it. But
I don't know how accurate that is, and I know people loved Terry McLaurin coming out because he was like a route running god. And I know Alec Pierce is not at that level. That's not what we're saying. Don't clip us with that.
It was just a thought. I mean, it just made me think of it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like, I mean, bare minimum, this dude is gonna be like a special teams guy, and like again, he does not have to be like a wide receiver 2. He's basically gonna be like wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 for this team. And I think that's a really good place for him to be in, and especially, I mean, come on, you get to play with Josh Allen, like that's gonna make you better pretty much automatically. At the very least.
If they can just get him running verts all day, that's a day 3 guy right there. He does one thing really well.
Yeah. I would be really happy if the Bills ended up taking Alec Pierce in the 4th round. It all depends on if a team really feels like he's worth taking that bet on in like the 3rd round. Maybe he goes there, but like he definitely seems like a high day 3 type of guy. And I think that would be a big get for them. Another receiver that you took a look at was Calvin Austin III from the University of Memphis. I believe somebody in the chat was chit-chatting about him. Amy Wagner, Calvin Austin III, small 5'8", but impressive jet sweep, slot, and more. 4.32, 40 long, cut and vision. Yay! So what did you think when you looked at Calvin Austin?
Running that Memphis spread, he was good. I mean, they schemed him open, they schemed him in motion, they got him in open space, and I mean, he ran a 4.32. I mean, there's not a lot of guys in the league that can hit that kind of top end speed, and I kind of like him. There's so many guys that came through the Bills, like Isaiah McKenzie, Ray McLeod, who were those like small speed guys who they schemed the ball to in certain scenarios. And I think he's going to be a great special teams contributor right off the bat. Going to be a great return guy. I can tell you that much. He's not going to be a 3-down guy, working in the slot primarily, but I think what you're going to get out of him is exactly what you draft him for.
Yeah, I mean, so you bring up an interesting point about return guy because that's been an issue. That was an issue last year because they basically said to Isaiah McKenzie like, okay, Andre Roberts is gone. You're kind of the only one with like punt and kick return experience that isn't one of our stars. Like Micah Hyde is a good like return guy, but they don't want to put him back there because he's Micah Hyde and he's so important to that defense. So
Mhm.
they put Isaiah McKenzie back there, and like he kind of was what we all expected. Like he had a lot of potential to make big plays, but he also like really struggled to consistently catch the ball at the catch point, and he also struggled just with fumbles in general. So that was always sort of flip flopping in and out, and then they drafted Marquez Stevenson, the speed guy out of Houston last year. And I mean, to be perfectly honest, he was kind of just the same as Isaiah McKenzie when it came to the return game. Like plenty of potential to make a big play, but there's those fumble problems and just like catching it cleanly. I mean, that was an issue with both those guys. I don't know if they necessarily want to give Marquez Stevenson another chance. It feels weird to just sort of say like, Jason Taylor just brought this up. Have we given up on Stevenson being the return guy? I don't know. Because like to me, he just sort of presents the same exact problems that Isaiah McKenzie had. Now, McKenzie came into Buffalo already having those problems. And Marquez Stevenson is going into his second year. Maybe there's a chance where he can just sort of get better and be more consistent. But as Erik Davey just said, Stevenson might be able to do it, but hope is not a plan. And that's exactly right. You can't just sort of bank on like maybe he'll get better. Like you got to be able to figure something out with this. And I mean, if Calvin Austin can be that sort of dude, that's great. But the other thing with Calvin Austin is just that I mean, like you said, fast, quick, but he's also 5'8", 170 pounds. Like we are not talking about somebody that is a like big dude. And now I'm kind of wondering with the combine that he had and how I think some people have viewed him, where do you see him being taken in this draft? Do you feel like he's a day 2 guy? Do you feel like he's a day 3 guy? Like how much of the size concerns is going to push him down the draft board?
We've seen guys in the last couple drafts get taken probably earlier than they should have. Like Tutu Atwell comes to mind in this kind of
Very good point.
scenario. Hollywood Brown gets taken in the first round. He's worked out pretty well for the Ravens, I'd say. He's in that same size range as Austin.
Yeah.
But he's probably going to be. I would peg him as like a late day 2. Maybe 4th, 5th round kind of guy because he can do a couple things really well. He's got one really great trait, which is that speed, and he's shown he can be good in the return game, both punt and kick return. So I think he's got some really good tools that some teams need. And working in that return game is so important. I mean, you really can't forget about special teams when you're drafting guys.
Yeah, and that's been such an issue with Bills fans. I think in general, it's just been like, you're almost just kind of holding your breath every time you see Isaiah McKenzie or Marquez Stevenson in the last year back there trying to return a kick, and it's tough. And it got to a point last year in the playoffs where they were basically just like, all right, Micah Hyde, you're just gonna have to do it because we can't afford to just fumble away a possession against New England. We can't afford to just fumble away a possession against the Chiefs. So to me, and the Bills have been very adamant about like bringing in guys that have special teams value. Like they just signed Saron Neal to a pretty decent contract because he is like that type of guy as a gunner on special teams. I mean, we saw in that playoff game where they put 3 dudes on him on one of those punt returns. I mean, that's just wild. I've never seen that before on a punt gunner. So like special teams is something that this franchise and this front office and this coaching staff really values. I just kind of wonder like how much do they value that with his receiving ability and his size concerns? How does that all sort of come together to form the picture that they view of him? Because, it may just be where they think of him as like a 4th or 5th round guy. But if there's another team that's like, listen, we love this dude, we think he can be our starting slot receiver right away, then they just take him in like the 3rd round. And now I've just essentially described how the NFL draft works. It's just like it's all about value. And all it takes is one team to just say like, we think you are more valuable than the way every other team thinks you are. Essentially, that's how the Bills landed Josh Allen, is that they just said, we don't care how like raw you are. We think we can get the most out of you because your physical tools are bazonkers. So we're gonna take that risk on you, and we think that you're worth this much value. We think you are worth 7th overall pick value. And they banked on themselves, and they were right. And I just sort of wonder if they feel the same way about a guy like Calvin Austin, who has a lot of like athletic ability, but relative to his size, it's a little trickier. So I that'll be very, very interesting to see. I'm not 100% sold that they would be totally in on him, but I could see it happening as well. Yeah, you had something else to say?
Certainly a niche kind of guy. He fills a role, and some teams will like him more than others, but he's got ability.
Yeah, and so we're gonna talk about 2 other guys to kind of close things out. We're gonna talk about somebody that the chat has been talking about a little bit. Jameson Williams from Alabama. Now, this is not somebody that I asked you to watch. This is not somebody that I said to watch, so I'm not gonna ask you to go super into detail. But like, if you're a fan of college football, you know who Jameson Williams is, and you know what he can do. The problem with Jameson Williams, of course, is that he tore his ACL, and that's pretty rough. So when it comes to somebody like Williams, where do you think he ends up in this draft? Because he is not like a super built dude, right? He is 6'1", he's 179, super dynamic as a player, but like, you kind of wonder, coming off an ACL tear, how do you feel about that? Like, how do you feel super confident about what he's going to bring to you in 2022? Because that's really the point of the Bills. Like, whatever the Bills are going to end up doing at receiver, they have to contribute in a pretty major way this season, because otherwise, like, you're kind of just like continuously punting to the next season or next couple of seasons. And while I'm not saying disregard the future as a whole, like, if you're going to take someone like a Jameson Williams, you got to be able to assume that he's going to be able to play. And we're not 100% sure when he may or may not be back. So, like, where do you land on Jameson Williams and where he might be and what he might even be able to contribute in 2022?
So I am staunchly anti-Trent Baalke and drafting injured players. However, ACLs have they have a good track record of coming back.
Shot across the bow at Trent Baalke. We're here for it.
There's a really good track record of players coming back from ACLs and performing well in the last decade. I mean, it's been proven that it's not a career killer like it was back in the early 2000s and before. So that's not a long-term issue. For this season, however, it probably will be an issue. There are extended timelines where players don't make it back for one reason or another. They need to have other surgeries to clean stuff up, or something gets infected. So that's always a risk. And then there's other risks, including coming back and having compensation injuries. So we've seen that happen with guys like Dalvin Cook, and obviously he's a high touch guy, and running back's a tough position to stay healthy at. But as far as 2022, he probably won't be an immediate contributor, and your best outcome would be an Odell Beckham-esque second half, which is nigh untouchable because that was an unbelievable rookie year from Beckham. That was crazy, but and different injury, I think. So
Yeah. Part of me just keeps thinking about like, okay, let's live in a world where like the defensive tackles that they really like and value in the first round are not available. Like, let's say Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt are both off the board. They don't feel great about Travis Jones in the first round. Let's say both the corners that we talked about are off the board. Kyler Gordon and Trent McDuffie are off the board. Jameson Williams is available. Let's say like the Ohio State receivers aren't available. Let's say some of the other top receivers aren't available. Jameson Williams is there. Do you feel like that's just like too valuable to pass up when everything else is already kind of taken? Or do you feel like maybe it's just best to trade back and accumulate a few more picks to get other guys that will contribute and probably contribute in 2022 rather than take that shot on Jameson Williams, who at best might contribute in the second half of the season?
He is a special talent, and you always have to think longer term in the NFL. I mean, of course, with the window that the Bills are in right now, it's important to capture the moment and kind of try to find players that can help you push past the Kansas Cities and those fluke Bengals. But I think like Jameson Williams is a really good value at 25. If he was healthy, he would go sooner, I think. So like you kind of sometimes you have to take that value. You want to stack blue chip players, and Jameson Williams has the potential to be that. You got to get your blue chip players, and that helps you build a team.
Yeah. I'm with you there. I'm with you there. Now, another Alabama player that we're going to talk about, Federian Mathis, nose tackle from there. I believe, if I remember correctly, because it's been a long couple days, I did ask you to watch him, and I did send you something awesome. That wasn't just a false memory I made. So, what were your thoughts about Federian Mathis when you watched him?
Not quite as athletic as the other interior guys we looked at. However, that is perfectly reasonable based on their testing and stuff. It's perfectly reasonable that he would not be a god among them. So they move around the line just like the other fellows we chatted about. He lined up 0, 4-eye. They got him out there. He's got good power. Doesn't take any false steps. He's certainly not fleet of foot, but he will take up space. And he's a good two-gapper. He works well against double teams. He sits in those double teams and blows up the play pretty well. They filtered him in and out. Because they have, they're Alabama, they have that depth to be able to do that. So not too varied in his pass rush, not too many moves, but he is effective getting up the field and getting there. He's a solid player. Probably like a day 2, day 3 guy. However,
Interesting. Do you feel like he is someone that if you were to draft him, like what do you feel like his contributions in year one would be? Like, is this somebody that you feel like can just sort of plug and play in specific situations, like as a 2-down type of player, or is this somebody that you really want working more in rotation and sort of bringing along slowly, like the Bills tend to do?
I'd bring him along a little bit slowly, give him some time to get used to the athleticism at the next level, and I think he's got the talent to be effective, but I think you can kind of filter him in there. And as the season goes on, you can give him more responsibilities. He learned under Nick Saban, so he's got kind of that knowledge and ability. So he's a good player, and I think he'd do well at the next level.
So we talked about, I did lie a little bit because I said those were going to be the last two, but I forgot that we had some other two that you wanted to bring up. So we're going to talk about a couple of offensive linemen. We're going to talk about Luke Gadicki, right? Am I saying that right? Gadicki?
I would say Gadecki, but
Gadecki.
I have also said names very poorly in the past, like for James Prochet. I was
Yeah.
yeah. Is it James? Is that
Wasn't it
I don't know.
James Person? Yeah.
Is that? Yeah.
Is he
I was
even,
I
is he
was
doing
said
anything in the NFL?
no. He was like a 7th round pick for the Ravens, and yeah,
Jeez.
gets a couple snaps here and there,
Yikes.
a couple punt returns.
Rip in peace, James Prochet career. So we have Luke Gadicki, who is a guard from Central Michigan. This is somebody that you brought up to me. I didn't even ask you to watch this, dude. You just kind of brought him up to me. So what do you think about Luke Gadecki, whatever his name is?
Well, he originally started out as a tight end at the University of Central Michigan University, however you want to say it. And then they bumped him down to right tackle, and he was a starter there for a few years at tackle. But I think he profiles more as a guard at the next level. He's a bit undersized. He's like 310, like 6'4", 310. So, but I think he'll do well in less space. Going out against the athletes on the edge would be a bit tough for him at the next level. However, he's got some nastiness in the run game, and he's always working. He's got the athleticism to get up to the next level, and get up to those linebackers. Works well in double teams. I think he's. I think he'd do well pushed inside, but yeah, I think he's a good fit. He'd bring versatility at least. He's probably a good 5 or 6 on most lines.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that that the versatility is something that that I think the Bills kind of value, and at least in somebody like Daryl Williams, who's been on the team the last 2 years. They played him at right tackle in 2020 when he came in initially. And he played pretty well. But this past year, he kind of struggled being out in space. And with various injuries to the interior, they ended up moving him to guard. They started Spencer Brown at right tackle, which was not the plan originally. They brought in Spencer Brown to kind of just be like, they wanted to bring him along slow, like they tend to do. And they wanted him to kind of be like that extra jumbo set blocker. He ends up being the starting right tackle for most of the season and was, all things considered, not that bad. I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. And Daryl Williams, I think, is solid, average at guard. But I think the Bills really do value that versatility on the offensive line. And I think with Aaron Kromer coming back as the offensive line coach, I think that I have to imagine that they'll address offensive line at some point. I would imagine they would address it in the draft, just to get guys that are more of Aaron Kromer's speed, because none of these guys that are on the roster are like quote unquote Aaron Kromer guys, at least in terms of like he didn't bring them in. He wasn't there when they were brought in. So I think that whoever they end up getting is going to sort of. I'd be surprised if they went into free agency with the interior offensive line. I really think they'll go into the draft, and somebody like Gadecki could be somebody that I think the front office really likes, and I think I could see that happening. And we had one more guy, Darian Kennard from the University of Kentucky. 6'5", 322, 35-inch arms, 11-quarter hands, 5'3", in the 40, vertical jump 25, broad jump 99, 3-cone drill 811, 20-yard shuttle 496. What did you think about Darian Kennard?
Kennard was, he was fine. He was a right tackle, so probably better. He's got the size to really be in the middle of that line. It's beefy, and he's got he's got that nastiness like Gadecki. That's something I really look for in guards. You want some real a-holes to be line. You really do. guys who are going to play to the echo of the whistle, and that's
right.
I think. He's more of like a stay in your way kind of guy, more than run your ass over. So he plays a bit tentatively, and I think that'll bump him down to like a project guy in like third day of the draft. But again, I value versatility in linemen. I like guys who show that they can play inside and outside, and I really think he can play inside. I think that'll probably be his primary position. So in an emergency, you throw him outside, and he's got the experience to play that right tackle position.
Interesting. Well, that is all good stuff. That is pretty much going to be it. Wow, we really hit an hour. Good for us. Yeah, that's pretty much going to be it. I know we didn't hit every single position. Part of that is really just because this was kind of put together at the last minute with Kyle dropping out, having to do stuff with his family. And I wanted Erik to be able to talk about guys that he would have an opportunity to watch, feel comfortable actually talking about. So, we didn't necessarily hit any tight ends. We didn't hit, super into the offensive line and all that. But
I've got a hot take.
Okay, we're here for hot takes. Go for it.
Okay. David gave me some crap in the pre-show. I think the Bills should absolutely sign Gronk and draft what's his name?
Trey McBride.
Trey McBride, absolutely. Go all in and run 12 personnel, run 13 personnel. Just go for it. I mean, you got Dawson Knox.
We are getting some light Gronk talk in the chat right now. I just the thing with that is just, to me, I mean, I'm obviously not opposed to bringing in Gronk. Some people have a crow up their butts about like his like with Trey White and all that. I don't really care about that. But I just think that signing Gronk and then also taking a guy like Trey McBride, who I think would have to be taken early, just feels like a lot being invested into that position, and I don't necessarily see that happening. So yeah, that was just it. We could only get to so much. Again, this is very last minute, and I was actually very happy with the fact that Erik was able to look at as many players as he did and actually give some really good insight. So thank you very much, Erik, for jumping in last minute. Where can the fine folks here at the Cover One Roundup find you online?
Just at Erik_Davey on Twitter. I'm a very silent person on Twitter. Don't really tweet much, so not much of a follow. I know
we need to get more people following you to get you to tweet more. We need to like cyberbully you into tweeting more.
I keep everything to myself, internalized. That's how I do it. Yeah.
Oh man. All right. You can find me as usual at DFAUXY at DFoxy. You can find me there for some very lukewarm and nonsensical takes about the draft and the Bills in general. That's going to be
great follow, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you.
Absolutely. There we go. With the pen.
There, other side. All right, that's going to do it for us. We appreciate all of the wonderful, gentle listeners of the Cover One Roundup pod coming in, spending their time with us tonight. We will see you all hopefully next week with Kyle. Adios.